Hey everyone, welcome to Create Context. I thought I would do something just a little bit different today. The Oscars were nominated just a few minutes ago as the time I was recording it, so I thought maybe we'd do just a little gut check, kind of see how we feel about things, what deserved it, what didn't deserve it, some snubs, some interesting ideas. So I'm not going to go through every category, but I do want to look at some of the bigger ones and see kind of what that means for overall. I think the first one to start with is Best International Feature. So Best International Feature has I'm Still Here, The Girl with the Needle, Amelia Perez, The Seed of the Sacred Fig, and Flow. Now, the one thing that is interesting about this Best International Feature category is 3 of these films are nominated in other categories. Flow is nominated in Best International Feature. Flow is an animated film about a cat out of Latvia that people seem to really enjoy, so I'm not surprised it got that nomination, but I think it is telling. It's nominated in Best International Feature and in Best Animated Feature, so I think there's a good chance Flow comes away with the win in Best Animated Feature. The other 2 films, I'm Still Here and Amelia Perez, were both nominated for Best Picture. Now, there's 10 nominees in Best Picture, and they always do that. They always kind of double up the nominees for Best Picture so that they can honor a few more films that didn't get a lot of below-the-line nominations. And I think that I'm Still Here is certainly worthy of that one. Amelia Perez is a film that I personally didn't connect with very well. I found some of the acting to be a little stinted. I found the songs to not be that great. Even the whole color grading of the film was kind of odd and dark. I will say I saw this film on Netflix instead of like in the theater where I've seen most of the other films. So that could have had something to do with it, but I think there's kind of a general consensus around at least critics that Amelia Perez is maybe not on the same level of some of these other films. I'm not 100% sure how it came away with this and so many other nominations, but some people, at least at the Academy, seem to really like it. It did come away with the Golden Globe win for Best Musical or Comedy. That's kind of their other big award of the night. They give away 2 Best Picture awards, one for Best Drama and then one for Best Musical or Comedy. Amelia Perez came away with the Musical or Comedy, while The Brutalist came away with Best Drama. Now, I don't think that means that The Brutalist or Amelia Perez are locked in for a Best Picture win, but I do think it is a good indication that these are 2 very strong contenders. Moving on, some other really interesting takeaways. Nosferatu came away with a lot of below-the-line nominations. It got Best Production Design, Best Makeup and Hairstyling, but no nominations in kind of the bigger categories. I just do think it's cool that a very strict standard horror film like Nosferatu came away with some nominations. I think Robert Eggers is starting to really become kind of a movie person's director. The other film that got a few nominations that I'm very happy to see is The Substance. The Substance was actually my favorite film of 2024. I really enjoyed that film. The Substance got nominated for Best Makeup and Hairstyling, as well as Best Original Screenplay and Best Director. Best Director was kind of a crammed category this year, so it's really great to see Coralie Farge getting this nomination. Let's kind of move on to just some of the more interesting nominees. So for Best Cinematography, you have The Brutalist, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, Maria, and Nosferatu. I think that the real frontrunner here is The Brutalist. People are talking a lot about the shots and kind of the grand epic scale of that film. So I think it would make a lot of sense for that movie to come away with it. When we get to awards night, if we see Amelia Perez, for example, take Best Cinematography, that's probably a good indication that Amelia Perez is going to win some other awards, including maybe even Best Picture. I do think that Dune Part 2 and Nosferatu, who are also on this list, also had some incredible cinematography. Obviously, Dune Part 2 is a second part, and it's a little more epic in scale than The Brutalist. It's also a sci-fi film, which is really interesting. Sci-fi typically doesn't get a lot of recognition at the Academy Awards anyway. It's showing up here, and I think that's pretty cool. For Best Adapted Screenplay, you had A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Amelia Perez, Nickel Boys, and Sing Sing. Nickel Boys didn't get as many nominations as I thought it would. Nickel Boys, in my opinion, is a little too experimental of a film to really garner that giant praise that you get from the Academy Awards. The Academy Awards tends to stay pretty mainstream. You always have a couple little ones in there that might not have been super big hits, but Nickel Boys is just a little too experimental, I think. The whole film is kind of done in this first person view, this kind of POV style of filming. That POV style switches a little bit throughout the half, but there's some really interesting work in here. I'm surprised Nickel Boys didn't get best cinematography just because of how the camera is put on these actors throughout the whole film. Like I said, it kind of begins with the first POV section, but then at other parts, when you're looking at parts that happen later in the main protagonist's life, the camera is put behind him in this idea to kind of separate what has happened to this person, that they're leaving behind the horrors that they face at this academy when they were younger. So there's a lot of camera work done to kind of put the viewer in that situation. You know, when you're watching them during their time at the Nickel Academy, you're seeing it through their eyes. It's this first person perspective. And then another protagonist shows up and it switches back and forth a little bit, but all the time kind of in Nickel Academy, you're seeing it from this first POV perspective. And then when we leave, when we, get with the protagonist and we're outside of Nickel Academy, the camera's behind it to kind of indicate leaving that time behind. So I'm surprised we didn't get a cinematography in there. I think cinematography that category could have taken it away from Maria or Amelia Perez. Again, a film I didn't personally connect with a lot. But for this category, I do see Sing Sing and Conclave working really hard to get their nominations. Sing Sing is a really incredible heartfelt movie. It's based on a true story of these inmates that start kind of a production company inside of their prison. It feels like kind of a twofer when it comes to Academy Award nominations. It is a movie about incarceration, and it brings up a lot of heady issues in that regard. And it's also a film that's kind of about the arts, right? About finding a way out of the world you've been in. And second is Conclave. Conclave is another film that I really didn't connect with too much. It is a very Aaron Sorkin-y type script that involves the papal conclave of electing a new pope and all of the kind of background backstabbing election things going on. I think it's very interesting that this film released during an election season. A lot of it's kind of mirroring that. There's some very kind of caricatures in that film that just don't feel very real, that feel very, like I said, Aaron Sorkin-y, very elevated characters. That being said, I think it is a very interesting movie until the end. There is a choice that is made narratively to end this film that I did not like, I did not connect with. I'm typically not one of these people who lets the end of a movie destroy the entire experience for me, Unlike what they say in The Brutalist, I do think sometimes it's about the journey and not just the destination. But with Conclave, man, that ending was just so bizarre, so bonkers, and it didn't really say anything. I wasn't, at least for me, if you knew what it was trying to say, if you understood the themes that this big, large reveal are supposed to mean, please let me know in the comments, because it just kind of flew over my head. It, in some ways, felt like a South Park sketch that just doesn't make any sense. I did not enjoy it. I felt it was kind of maybe even a cop-out for the directors or whoever wrote the screenplay to throw that in there instead of making it a different reveal. I'm trying to avoid spoilers for the film in case you haven't seen it, but if you have, you probably know exactly the twist reveal I'm talking about, and you can see how that twist could have been a little different and actually been saying something about the Catholic Church. In this regards, it feels like it's not saying anything. It's just kind of making a cop-out and having a shocking moment to have a shocking moment. And for me, that kind of destroyed all of the themes of the movie. It made everything come crashing down to where it doesn't just make sense what they were doing. A Complete Unknown was a really great film as well. This is loosely adapted from a book called Bob Dylan Goes Electric, or Dylan Goes Electric, something like that. I haven't read the book myself, but A Complete Unknown is in some ways following that journey of Bob Dylan going electric. That is kind of the culmination of the film when he goes electric at this folk festival. But really, A Complete Unknown, while it's a film I enjoyed a lot, there's not much going on in the screenplay. Most of the film is just Timothée Chalamet doing a really great Bob Dylan impression and singing some really great Bob Dylan songs. So it's a fun movie, but it's just a fun movie because of that. So it's interesting to see it here. I don't know how well it's going to do. I want to jump down to one category that I thought was a little funny. That's the best visual effects. So for best visual effects, the nominees were Alien Romulus, Better Man, which is that Robbie Williams documentary where instead of using an actor, they use a CGI monkey. Then there is Dune Part 2. That's definitely worthy of the visual effects nomination. Then there was Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, another film that heavily featured CGI monkeys. And last was Wicked, another film that heavily utilized CGI monkeys. I think it's interesting that of this nominee list of 5, 3 of these movies are kind of just in there because they did a really good job making a CGI monkey. I just think that's pretty funny. Next, let's jump up to original screenplay. So for original screenplay, we have Anora, The Brutalist, A Real Pain, September 5, and The Substance. So in my opinion, I think The Brutalist probably wins that one. Even though The Substance was my favorite film of the year, I do think The Brutalist has just this really interesting screenplay, this interesting script that follows the life of Laszlo Toth throughout his journey coming to America and kind of his rise and fall and rise again. You know, it feels very much like this epic put on screen. It feels like A Tale of Two Cities or Great Expectation, but in film form. And I think this film gets honored for that. What I do want to point out, though, is Anora. Anora is a fantastic film, one of my favorites, at least the top 5 of 2024, mainly because of Mikey Madison's performance in it, but just a great film and one that I think deserves a little more credit, a little more recognition than it got in this list. Last one I want to touch on is September 5. September 5 is a movie that I personally didn't connect with a lot. I think the real story of September 5 is much more interesting than the film version portrays. And that's just a personal taste. But I think it is interesting that it gets this original screenplay. Again, it's kind of an Aaron Sorkin-esque screenplay, and the Academy does love those type of screenplays. Now let's look at Best Director. So for Best Director, you have Sean Baker for Anora, Brady Corbet for The Brutalist, James Mangold for A Complete Unknown, Jacques Udar for Amelia Perez, and Carolee Fargay for The Substance. I personally would give this to Fargay for The Substance. I think she does an incredible job bringing that film to life. If you've seen it, especially the fact that she uses all practical effects in The Substance. And I think it really is a shame that she didn't get nominated for, not just her, but her film didn't get nominated for Best Visual Effects because everything they did was so homegrown. They did it on such a small budget, and the movie truly looks gorgeous at times, grotesque at others, and everything was just kind of made in this warehouse. All the blood and guts and body horror and gore really harkens back to this 1980s style of body horror films, you know, movies like The Fly. So I find it just a shame that she didn't get nominated for Best Visual Effects, and instead we got Better Man, a movie that just kind of uses a CGI monkey. I think that's a really big shame. I also think Sean Baker did an incredible job shooting and doing all of Anora, right? I know it's obviously a team effort. He didn't do it all himself, but he was definitely the lead of that ship, and you can tell seeing Sean Baker go from movies like Tangerine to The Florida Project to Anora, it's just a really interesting growth in this guy as a filmmaker. And I'm at least happy to see him nominated and in this category. I do think, again, that Brady Corbet is probably going to take this for The Brutalist. The Brutalist is just too epic to kind of be overlooked. And the Academy does love A24. They love to honor this, you know, kind of indie punk rock type of studio. I think they're really on that train. So getting into kind of some of the acting categories, for Best Supporting Actor, you had Yura Borisov for Anora, Kieran Culkin for A Real Pain, Edward Norton for A Complete Unknown, Guy Pearce for The Brutalist, and Jeremy Strong for The Apprentice. The Apprentice is an odd one. We'll see that again. It didn't get any nominations except for actor and supporting actor. I think this nomination, while Jeremy Strong is great and he's great in that film, I think this nomination does feel a little politically motivated. Like, we want to show some clips and cuts from The Apprentice in our sizzle reel throughout the night, so we can kind of make some jokes and jabs at the new administration. And that's fine. You know, if that's the Academy's prerogative, go for it. I do think Jeremy Strong gave a pretty strong performance in that film. I don't know if it reaches the level of some of these other characters. All of that wrapped up in a bow, Kieran Culkin is going to win this category. I don't think there's any more lock than Kieran Culkin winning in A Real Pain. People love him. Coming off of Succession, his television show, people just love Kieran Culkin. He does a great job in this film. He's annoying when he needs to be. He's endearing when he needs to be. It really is a great performance. And even though maybe I preferred Yura Borisov and Honora, I thought his performance was maybe a little better. I don't even want to say better. It's hard to judge, you know, an art like this. Maybe I connected with his character a little bit more. That's a better way of putting it. Kieran Culkin, this is his category. Congratulations. Might as well just ship him the Oscar now. For Best Supporting Actress, you have Monica Barbaro for A Complete Unknown, Ariana Grande for Wicked, Felicity Jones for The Brutalist, Isabella Rossellini for Conclave, and Zoe Saldana for Amelia Perez. This category, outside of Felicity Jones, all of it, I guess, isn't surprising. These people have all kind of been in the conversation. I am a little surprised to see Ariana Grande in here for Wicked. I don't think her performance was that fantastic, but Wicked has certainly had a moment this year. It was one of the highest grossing films of the year, and the Academy, I think, really wants to recognize that film and what it's done for the movies. This is also not a sequel, not a prequel, but very much in the vein of old classic Hollywood. And again, the Academy loves that stuff. Monica Barbaro for A Complete Unknown, she gives a great performance as Joan Baez, but I actually connected a little bit more with Elle Fanning's character in that film. Again, I will say it's kind of a take it or leave it. Both of them give incredible performances. While I personally thought Elle Fanning did a little bit better with her job, she certainly had less to do in the film than Monica Barbaro. I also think that since A Complete Unknown came out on Christmas, a lot of people have been listening to that soundtrack a lot, and Monica Barbaro is on that soundtrack a lot as Joan Baez, and she really is giving a spot-on impression. So while I might have liked Elle Fanning's character and her performance a little bit better, I do think that the Monica Barbaro nomination is a good one. Isabella Rossellini in Conclave, she does a great job in that film for the 3.5 minutes she's in it. This one I find kind of odd. I think she deserves it. I also think she's in that film for such a small amount of time that it is a little odd to see her. And lastly, Zoe Saldana in Amelia Perez. Amelia Perez is not a film that I enjoyed very much, but I cannot help but recognize her performance because she does give a career elevating performance in that film. Coming from these Marvel movies and doing a film like Amelia Perez is a big swing, a big kind of risk, and she does absolutely nail her job in that film. Moving up to Best Actor, you have Adrian Brody in The Brutalist, Timothée Chalamet in A Complete Unknown, Coleman Domingo in Sing Sing, Ralph Fiennes in Conclave, and Sebastian Stan in The Apprentice. I said you'd see The Apprentice again. Here it is with Sebastian Stan. I actually preferred Sebastian Stan's performance in A Different Man a little bit more than The Apprentice, but I'm just glad they're giving Sebastian Stan his flowers. I kind of didn't think he would make it in. I kind of thought it would be a little bit of a split vote between his appearance in The Apprentice and his appearance in A Different Man, but he got it for The Apprentice, and good for him. I'm happy. I do think that this category is coming down to Adrian Brody and Timothée Chalamet. I think that's a really interesting race. Adrian Brody won for The Pianist years and years ago. He was the youngest person to ever win a Best Actor award for his role in that film. And it's interesting because Timothée Chalamet, if he were to win for A Complete Unknown, would usurp him as the youngest to ever win a award, to ever win the Best Actor award for a film. So I think it really is between those two people. I think they're both running pretty good campaigns. If I were to bet money on it, I would probably say Timothée Chalamet. His performance in that film is just kind of next level. It's really great. Next, in Best Actress, you have Cynthia Erivo in Wicked, Carla Sofia Gascon in Amelia Perez, Mikey Madison in Honora, Demi Moore in The Substance, and Fernanda Torres in I'm Still Here. This is a very interesting category, and it's a category that, man, I hope Mikey Madison runs away with it because her performance in Anora is next level to anything else. I'm really happy also to see Demi Moore here for The Substance. She gives just an incredible performance. I think it's probably down to those two. I think Mikey Madison would win it because she gave the best performance. I think a lot of people see that. Demi Moore, her winning it, would kind of be maybe like Jamie Lee Curtis winning a few years ago for Everything Everywhere All at Once, kind of like, hey, you know, there's this actress that we've known forever that has done some really great work and then has done some kind of campy commercial work, but has been a part of Hollywood and the system for decades now. It's time to give them their flowers for this performance. And I don't think it's the last we see of Mikey Madison, especially with Sean Baker projects. I wouldn't be surprised if we see her again working with him. But in my opinion, her performance was the best actress performance of the year. But I think it might be a coin flip between the two. We'll have to see. All right, and this is the big one. Best Picture, there are 10 nominees. The 10 nominees are Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. Pretty good list. Not really any surprises here. Nickel Boys showing up is maybe the kind of biggest outlier here, but The Substance getting in, I think after it getting so much praise at the Golden Globes, I think it's pretty easy to see The Substance getting itself in there. Again, Wicked being this huge kind of phenomenon. Not surprising seeing that one here. Amelia Perez, the same. I guess Dune Part 2 might be the biggest kind of surprise here. It kind of felt like Dune Part 2's time was over. People had kind of forgot about it, but it's back. It's here in Best Picture, and then a few down the line nominations. Conclave, that's one of those kind of like, hey, you made a pretty good movie. Here you go. I think Best Picture is probably coming down to The Brutalist and Amelia Perez. If I were to guess, I think Anora has a good shot as well as A Complete Unknown, and maybe even Wicked. Who knows if they want to really give that film its flowers and, you know, be proud of what it did at the box office. But if I were a betting man, if I were putting money, it would be on The Brutalist. The Brutalist just feels like such this film nerd movie. And I see it kind of coming away with a lot of wins on this night, including Best Picture. But we'll see. Maybe they want to give it to A Complete Unknown. Maybe Amelia Perez comes and gets it. It seems like a lot of people really connected with that film. And I understand that film is about, trans identity, trans life, and, Mexican life. And I think those are very big, hot topic, hot button issues at this time in our country. And the Academy sometimes likes to lean into those. Sometimes they get it wrong with a film like Crash or a film like Green Book. And it feels like they might get it wrong again with a film like Amelia Perez. The difference, I think, is even though I didn't love Green Book and I didn't love Crash, I should say, didn't really like Crash. Crash had some big problems. I do think those two films are better than Amelia Perez. I just did not connect with that movie at all. I thought the musical numbers were not that great. But, I'm not on the voting body, unfortunately. No one called and asked. But if they did, I would probably give it to The Substance. That's who I'd give it to. But it's probably going to go to The Brutalist or Amelia Perez. Maybe Anora, but probably The Brutalist. The one thing that I think is kind of a shame, the only, I don't know if there's such thing as snubs, but something that I would have nominated that I didn't see here. In Best Original Score, you have The Brutalist, Conclave, Amelia Perez, Wicked, and The Wild Robot. All these films, with the exception of Amelia Perez, have pretty good scores. Conclaves was kind of take it or leave it. I didn't love it. But Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross did 2 scores for 2 separate movies this year for Queer and Challengers. None of that showed up. And I think that is kind of a indication, maybe not an indication, not seeing either of those Luca Guadagnino movies on this list anywhere, I think is a little surprising. But I thought if there was anywhere they were going to get in, it was going to be an original score, because Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, those guys just do incredible stuff. It seems like anywhere that something from a Luca Guadagnino movie could have shown up, that something else just kind of, eased its way in. I think you could have seen in Best Actress, you could have maybe seen Zendaya in Challengers, but instead you got Carla Gascon and Amelia Perez or Fernanda Torres, and I'm Still Here. They wanted to kind of recognize those people. I think in Best Actor, a lot of people were saying Daniel Craig for Queer. Queer was a movie I actually really liked. I know it was kind of, let's say, polarizing with audiences, people that saw it. I remember vividly walking out of that movie being like, wow, this is really interesting. Again, I'm someone that really likes William S. Burroughs. I love Naked Lunch. I love Junkie. And I loved his book Queer. And I love, the Cronenberg version of Naked Lunch. I think that's a great film. So seeing his second book brought to the screen in such an interesting and visual way, I really liked it. And I really loved the music. The music has a great score from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. It also has a lot of really cool 90s music from Nirvana to Prince to Sinead O'Connor. It's a film that I really enjoyed, but I also walked out of the movie theater understanding not a lot of people are going to connect with it. And there was actually a group of college kids behind me. Vividly remember them walking out behind me and them just like looking at each other and going, what did we just watch? That sucked, man. That was terrible. And I went like, giggled a little bit to myself. And I was like, yeah, I guess I can see, it's hard to get on that film's level. Burroughs was such a weird and out there guy, and Queer is such a weird and out there book, and adapting that to the screen was very odd. There's also the whole kind of thing around Queer where William S. Burroughs murdered his wife. We say murder, accidentally shot her in the head playing a game of William Tell. And that happened like during the writing of Queer. So there are some visual imagery in the film that harken back to that, but it's never touched on in the book or in the film. It's just kind of there as a representative of what happened. So if you don't know that story, if you don't know all that stuff about Burroughs, I get that it, would be very hard to, one, follow this movie and pick up everything it's throwing down. But Queer would probably be, I'm not going to say a snub. I don't think it was personally snubbed. It didn't do very well at the box office. It seemed a lot of people didn't really like it or connect with it. But it is probably my favorite movie of the year that didn't get any recognition. And you know what? That's it. Those are the Oscar nominations, at least the one I'm going to talk about. There's a bunch more nominations. Some films I haven't seen, specifically a lot of the shorts and some of the documentary films. I'm going to try and see all those before the Oscars come up, but very excited about this list and excited to see what happens. So see you again next time.